processed meats commonly have emulsifiers, margarine. Some studies have shown that emulsifiers will alter the microbiome, your gut bacteria. This is interesting. You know how chemicals have consequences. We all know that, right?
Yes, I'm learning that, yes.
Chemicals and nutrition is about chemistry in large measure. And biochemistry specifically, it's about chemistry. And people don't think of food in chemical terms. Wouldn't expect them to, right?
No.
Unless you're trained. I think in that way because of my training. And biochemistry is very important when it comes to nutrition. So, studies have shown that these emulsifiers alter the microbiome, and they found that out with mice. So how this worked, Gary, from a research standpoint, first thing that the researchers do, they do laboratory studies. They either do in vitro studies, which are in a dish lab, or in vivo. In vivo would be lab animals. So there are two types of laboratory studies. And that's usually where things start. Then you go to the next level, and then the next level. But they did these in mice. And what they found out was that the emulsifiers caused low-grade inflammation. And it increased the risk for obesity in the mice and created other metabolic disorders. With humans, they have found that gut bacteria can be affected by these food additives that subsequently result in intestinal inflammation. People wouldn't put that together unless some researchers out there in the world, you know, in their line of work, working in obscurity, as they always say, figure this out. So there was these researchers at Georgia State University, located in Atlanta, and they went to the next level, they said in the article, to investigate two common emulsifiers, carboxymethyl cellulose, CMC, and polysorbate 80, P80. They wanted to know if those emulsifiers would affect the person psychologically. So you go say, wait a minute. You went from your gut to your brain. How did you get there? That's a big leap. But it's not. The gut-brain connection, we have guests come on here and talk about that connection all the time. The conversation between the gut and the brain is a two-way conversation. They're interdependent. All the systems of the body are linked interdependently. The gut health and the health of gut bacteria influence mental well-being. 10 years ago, we weren't talking that way, quite frankly. And it's to put that together, you think about it. You say, wait a minute. You got microscopic organisms. These are bacteria. What in the world would they have to do with my mental well-being? Well, in 2011, in that one experiment, when treating mice with Lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is a good bacterium, it's good bacteria. Lactobacillus rhamnosus, you can buy that in the store, caused miserable, they said, changes in the brain and reduced anxiety caused measurable changes in the brain and reduced anxiety-like behaviors or reactions in the mice. Now that's kind of odd. Taking a probiotic, for example, would do something like that. Another study they did with mice had no effect. So, you know, a more recent study showed that an antibiotic use in mice altered the microbiome. To what extent? It didn't cause them to be more calm. The antibiotic caused them to be more anxious. It drove up. Why? Because what do antibiotics do?
It destroys the bacteria in the gut. I learned that one on Monday.
Right. So they kill bacteria. Antibiotics are a wonderful drug. Save many people's lives every single day, every minute. But they don't discriminate. They see a bacterium, good, bad, or indifferent, they're going to go after it. So you take antibiotics, you alter the microbiome. you reduce the number of good bacteria. That means that's not good. It affected the mice, caused them to be anxious. Now, this most recent study looked at P80 and CMC. When we come back, I'll tell you, we'll stick with the Mises, what they found. They published this study in Scientific Reports. That's not a comic book. That's a serious journal. So, I'm glad that you found that. It's a nice way to talk about this gut-brain connection. But much that we know about how food affects humans and chemicals in food affect humans starts at the laboratory level, experiments with mice. Welcome to Let's Talk Nutrition. Talking about, Gary had sent me an article about food additives, and they found out that certain emulsifiers that they add to food influence the gut microbiome, right? Your microbiome, the bacteria, that living ecology in your gut. And how, you say, well, how it affected them, caused them to be more anxious. It affected them psychologically because there was an alteration of the gut bacteria. That seems so odd, that these microorganisms would, you're going from your gut, from your stomach, in your intestines, that whole region, to your brain. So I've been breaking down this series of experiments they did with mice. That rolls us forward now. And here we are with these team of researchers come out of Georgia, University of Georgia. What was it, Georgia? I remember.
Yes, Atlanta.
Mm-hmm. And this most recent study found that the additives, the P80 and the CMC, these emulsifiers, alter the mental state. If you can think of mice having a mental state, all they know is that they noticed that the mice, their behavior, they became more anxious. And what they did was they added these emulsifiers to the drinking water of the mice for 12 weeks. Then they measured their behavior. And then they looked at their changes in their microbiome and other physiological parameters. And Professor Geert de Vries said, quote, "We asked the question, can emulsifiers' effects on general systemic inflammation also be extended to the brain and to behavior?" Close quote. Then he said the answer was yes. So the studies showed that the emulsifiers did not impact the gut bacteria, but in different ways did impact the bacteria, but in different ways for male and female mice, to make it more complicated. Oh, jeez. They saw an increase in anxious behavior with the mice, particularly in the male mice. In the female mice, there was a reduction in social behavior. They became less social, less interactive. So the point here, and then Dr. de Vries said this, quote, "We know that inflammation triggers local immune cells to produce signaling molecules that affect tissues in other places, including the brain. The gut also contains branches of the vagus nerve." That's the connection, that vagus nerve, "which forms a direct information pathway to the brain," close quote. So, as I always say to you, food has consequences. Food has consequences in ways that are good and bad. And sometimes those consequences are very complicated. And when they start messing with the food, when you take whole food, natural food, and you process it, including additives, is processing food. And, it's one thing, and they, as I told you, they do it for different reasons. Change the color, change the taste, change the smell, change the look, make it live longer on the shelf, longer shelf life, all those reasons. But at the end of the day, it's highly processed. And if you eat enough of that stuff, it has an effect. Even with some people, they're very sensitive to those chemicals. And they don't even realize it, how it's affecting them. So these emulsifiers, and there's so many, I don't know, Gary, if you typed in how many additives included in food, I'll bet you it's in the scores, if not hundreds. Just check me. Satisfy my curiosity. The list is probably very long. How many additives are added to food? It's got to be a long, long list. And those food scientists and the chemists that they work with, hand in hand, hand in glove, for the food companies, all day long, they're figuring out how to put these additives in food to make it more appealing to you, and then to use it in the marketing. But at the end of the day, you know, you go back to basics. Eating whole food, food that hasn't been sliced, diced, chemically treated, you know, and whatever. At the end of the day, your diet has to be constituted more of that than the other. It seems to me common sense.
It's into the thousands.
Okay, thank you very much.
Because hold on, this is what they consider. Okay, there in food additives you have safety and freshness, nutritional value, taste, texture, and appearance.
All the things I said so far. Go ahead.
Okay. Then you have direct and indirect food additives, color additives, certified colors, exempt from certification colors, composition and properties of substances. I mean, it's just unbelievable.
And look here. How do they know how any one of those chemicals affects the body?
I stopped eating cereal because of food additives.
Okay. So they haven't tested every one. They haven't. But these chemicals get approved. If nobody dies, that's cool. It gets approved. But you don't have to die to have some negative consequence from having these additives in the food. You can end up with all kinds of gastrointestinal issues, psycho-emotional issues, as we just pointed out. I mean, that's not satisfactory. It's not acceptable. And there are not enough FDA agents and chemists and inspectors to test all those drugs or all those chemicals. What a mess. Welcome back. Welcome to Let's Talk Nutrition. No, I'm not at the beach. If you're watching that lovely scene behind me, that is the beach. That's Clearwater Beach.
Yep.
Love that shot, man.
It's peaceful, ain't it?
Can you put me in the Alps?
I can.
All right.
Look for something.
I want to go. There are two places I would like to go. Prague, and then I would like to go to the Italian Alps. It's supposed to be in northern Italy. It's supposed to be beautiful.
Now, what part
of Italy my mother from?
Yes.
Southern Italy, near Sicily. Calabria.
Okay.
Catanzaro is the town. Yeah. She was an immigrant. She came here when she was a teenager. 13, I think she was. No, hardly any education. Amazing. Amazing woman. I think about her all the time, every single day. There's not one day goes by I don't think about my mother. Isn't that something?
I'm the same way. I see stuff and it just reminds me of certain smells.
I know. Oh, it's amazing. You're invited to call the show anytime you want. I was talking about at 877-897-8255. I was talking about these additives put in food. Emulsifiers is one category. Let me just tell you something else about these things. These emulsifiers, like polysorbate 80, I was just talking about that. Lecithin, carrageenan, polyglycerols, xanthan, and other gums. What do those ingredients do? They often are added, they keep the oils and the fats from doing what? What does oil and fat tend to do in a product? Separate. So they prevent that. They also are used to improve the texture of the food, as I was telling you, and the shelf life. You find ice cream, baked goods, salad dressing, even in veggie burgers, okay? Non-dairy milks, hamburger patty. It goes on and on. The same group of researchers out of Atlanta, I was talking about Dr. DeVries. There's another one of his colleagues, Dr. Gwertz, Andrew Gwertz. They're all at Georgia State University. Apparently, they got a whole program there, a line of research that they're working together on. And they published a study in the journal Nature and said that those kinds of ingredients that I just mentioned, those emulsifiers, contribute to the incidence of obesity, metabolic syndrome, and inflammatory bowel disease. How? Again, they interfere with the microbiome, with the good bacteria that live in your gastrointestinal tract, the gut microbiome, as it's called. So we consume foods and we are unaware at times how these chemicals behave, and we know how they behave in the food because they put them in there with certain purpose. But we don't often know how they behave in the human body. And people eat these foods and things start to go haywire and they can't figure out what's wrong with them. Why is my gut so upside down? Why am I having all these terrible cramps? Why am I having constipation, diarrhea, gas, bloating, severe pain? What am I doing? And they're puzzled. Look at the first place to look. If you're looking for the suspect, go to your pantry, go to your refrigerator, go to your, wherever you keep your food, and look for processed food. And start reading the labels. Those chemicals affect everybody in different ways. So I'm just giving you a heads up. Here's how to connect to the show. You can call if you'd like to talk about this. This is an important topic. I have guests that come on here. I got 2 books right here. Dr. Jensen comes on, Karen Jensen, the 3 Brain book. And then in the mail, I got a book. Don't know who this person is, but it's yet another one. There's scores of them. Called A Gut Feeling by Heather Ann Wise. Conquer your sweet tooth by turning into your microbiome. all kinds of books on the gut-brain connection and how we feel psycho-emotionally. Who would think that altering the gut population in your gut, in your stomach, in your intestines would somehow affect you psycho-emotionally? Be mindful. These microbes have evolved with us throughout our evolution, throughout our history as a species. We have a symbiotic relationship with them. They're looking for a host. We're an ideal host, and we're lucky to have them. Here's how to connect.
You can reach us at 877-897-8255. That's 877-897-TALK. Dr. Garko's personal email is drgarko, letstalknutrition.com. Follow us on Facebook at Let's Talk Nutrition, on Instagram at Let's Talk Nutrition, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Let's Talk Nutrition, where we have over 58,000 views, and everything is archived by date and closed caption for the hearing impaired.
When you start to think of nutrition therapeutically, if you have a client, I'm not a doctor, so I don't have patients, but you can have clients. If you have a client that has a gastrointestinal order or a host of them, several issues with their gut, the first place to start is to clean up that diet. Get them off all processed foods if you can, or at least reduce the intake, the consumption, and start to get them to eat whole foods, ideally whole food plant-based diet, ideally. And you would be amazed how things start to change. That one change, moving them off processed foods and into more whole foods, and not necessarily raw all the time either. Some foods have to be cooked. You will see dramatic changes in a client or a patient if you're a doctor. But classical medicine oftentimes will treat these disorders pharmaceutically. And they address the symptoms, but they don't get at the cause. When you want to get rid of termites in the house, you don't paint the house to make it look better. You call the exterminator to get to you got to get rid of them. You have to correct it at that level. Renovating the house, painting the house isn't going to get rid of the termites. You get my point. So I'm just saying, that's how important nutrition is. From a therapeutic perspective, it can do amazing things if you get hooked up with the right expert, the right doctor, the right nutritionist, dietitian, somebody who knows what they're doing. You don't want some whack job that, got some certificate online and calls himself a dietitian or a nutritionist. No. Find somebody with real credentials. We'll be back.
Feel tired, lethargic, or irritable? Take solace. You're one of millions of Americans that has trouble falling asleep or staying asleep. In fact, according
That's a live shot. Where is that?
There's just a little bit of B-roll there in the Swiss Alps, a Mont Blanc.
Okay. That looks cold as it looks cold there, man. Yeah. What is that? A tram of some sort?
Yes.
Interesting. We have that ability. We can all these shots that Gary puts in behind me. It's interesting. I said I want to be in the Swiss Alps, so there he has me in the Swiss Alps. Here's a blast from the past. I don't mean to make light of it. Plague. What? Plague. Why am I talking about plague? I alluded to this, and I talked about it the other day on the show, that it's turned up in our country yet again, and of all places, Wyoming. The Wyoming's Department of Health has confirmed another case of plague, and it was found in a cat. That was the third case in the past 6 months in Wyoming. Wyoming. We're not talking about some medieval town out in the hinterland somewhere in Europe somewhere or whatever. No. Most of the cats had a history of going outside, in this case, with these cats that had the plague, said Dr. Carl Musgrave with the Wyoming Department of Health, I presume. He's the public health veterinarian. And he believes that they got exposed to fleas. That's the vector. Went outside hunting rodents. The cats were outside hunting for rodents. When they were outside, they picked up the fleas off the rodents. The fleas are the vector. They carry the bacterium for the plague. Now, it's a bacterial infection, not a viral infection. And it's caused by this bacterium called Yersinia pestis. I should say it's a pestis. That's spread by fleas in cycles among wild rodents and then can get transmitted to humans. The fleas then bite a human, and then you're now infected. If you go to the CDC website, and I did, you're going to find a pretty, how can I put this, detailed treatment for plague in terms of what they're talking about. And it's remarkable what you learn. There are different kinds of plague. There's bubonic plague, which is the most common. There's septicemic plague. Well, that happens when bacteria multiply in your bloodstream. And then there's pneumonic plague that occurs. These when plague bacteria will infect your lung, pneumonia, lungs. So there are different forms of it. How do people get the plague? The bites of infected fleas. That's one way. Touching or skinning infected animals. You know, Gary, some of your friends that go hunting and they eat these critters. Prairie dogs, squirrels, rats, and rabbits.
Yeah.
Okay. Those rabbits may look cute. Stay away. Inhaling droplets from the cough of an infected person or animal, especially sick cats. And I wrote an article, toxoplasmosis, don't kiss your cats.
Mm-hmm.
It's on my website. And when I wrote that, I thought, nobody's going to read this. They'd think I'm crazy. What's that man talking about? Don't kiss your cat. I love my cat. Well, don't love the cat so much. You can protect yourself. Go to the CDC website. If you go on a search engine, Google whatever, Google Chrome, CDC plague, and you will see a link will come right up the top. Click on it. It's a very good breakdown. And you're thinking, I don't have to worry about that. Well, tell it to those people in Wyoming.
Well, we broadcast up there, so one of the things that I think is interesting is in our neck of the woods, Ocala is the horse capital of the United States.
Ocala, Florida. That's north of here. We're in Tampa.
And we broadcast up there, and we broadcast in Jasper and Valdosta, Georgia. And one of the things that people have in farms, as you know this as well as I, they have farm cats. Where do the farm cats stay? Outside.
In the barn, this and that, going after the rats.
Rats that eat the feed.
Right.
So it's relevant. People don't understand why you're talking about it, but it is. It's very relevant to this area and where we broadcast at.
It is relevant. And, of course, during the Middle Ages, this was catastrophic. It was catastrophic. I mean, what happened? How many people died? I mean, my God. And they didn't know what was going on. They didn't understand it. It's just, if it's left untreated, it will kill you. And the very common form of it is septicemic plague, right? Where the bacterium Yersinia pestis will multiply in your bloodstream and spread throughout your body. You're in a lot of trouble. Now, they can give you antibiotics, thank goodness. And then you have pneumonic plague, affects your lungs. Wherever you have a large population of rodents, you always. I'm just amazed when you think about some of the inner city conditions in some of these metropolitan cities, in some of the inner city where there's a lot of poverty, and some of those buildings with all those rodents. I'm just amazed that nobody has gotten sick there. Nevertheless, I just bring it to your attention. I know this is the 21st century, and I'm talking about a 16th century disease, in essence. But these microbes know how to survive. They occupy the planet. In the background, if you're watching the show, that is where? Switzerland?
It said Mont Blanc.
Mont Blanc?
Yeah.
Very nice. People there, looks the fog and the cold.